He stole millions meant for men who'd already lost legs, homes, and hope. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just gave him rope. What he did with it was up to him. This is not a story of forgiveness. This is what happens when you cross the wrong veteran.
My name's Raymond Cole, 52. Contractor by trade, roofer by necessity, and for the past 30 years just a guy trying to pay his bills without stepping on anyone's throat. Born in rural Missouri, raised on work boots and warnings. I never had much of a family, no siblings. Dad died in '91, Mom followed 6 months later. I learned early that trust is a fragile thing and money is what people really care about when things fall apart. I never got rich, but I got steady. Built a reputation with my hands, gutting old homes, patching roofs through Midwest summers, drywall in the winters. By the time I hit 40, I had 5 guys working under me, steady calls from realtors, and enough scratch to take winters off if I felt like it. Never did. I wasn't built for rest. About 6 years ago, I got a contract from a guy named Fletcher Dane. Real estate flipper, mid-40s, always in sport coats and clean boots. Never liked him. Too smooth. Too many smiles that didn't reach his eyes. But the money was good and he paid up front, so I took the job. We did 12 houses for him over 5 years. I handled the dirty work, demo, foundation fixes, the kind of stuff you only trust to someone who knows how to bleed for it. Then one day he handed me something different. Not a house this time, he said, sliding a set of plans across a cafe table in St. Charles. This is a bid for the new Veterans Center outside Columbia. State project. Funding already cleared. You in? I hesitated. Why me? Because I trust you, Ray. You keep your head down, you don't cut corners, and you never talk too much. That last line stuck with me. I should have paid more attention. The contract was big, nearly $6 million across 18 months. I wasn't the GC, just a lead sub on construction coordination, but it was enough money to change my retirement. I didn't ask many questions, and I should have. I didn't know what he was hiding behind the architectural plans, the invoices, the shell companies listed in microscopic print. All I saw was the chance to finally breathe easy by the time I turned 60. We started pouring concrete that March. By July, I had 16 men working under me and 2 on-site trailers humming day and night. Local news came to film it, smiling veterans, ribbon graphics, the whole 9 yards. It felt good. Clean. Real. But one night, around 11:30, I got a call from my guy in accounts. Chuck. Never calls after hours. Ray, he said, voice dry. You need to see this. What am I looking at? There's $180,000 missing from the materials fund. Gone. Paid out to a vendor called Red Ridge Supply. But it doesn't exist. I was quiet. What do you mean it doesn't exist? I mean I searched the vendor ID, business license, EIN, all fake. I hung up. Didn't sleep that night. I drove to the site at sunrise, walked the perimeter twice, stared at the rebar and scaffolding like it might give me answers. At 9 a.m. I confronted Fletcher. His face didn't flinch. Relax, Ray. These kinds of projects, there's always movement. Adjustments. I've got people who handle that. Not your concern. It is my concern. My name's on this too. He smiled. Only if you want it to be. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. And that he thought I was weak enough to let it go. I didn't. Over the next 3 weeks, I started copying everything. Receipts, emails, shipping manifests. I played dumb on site, but every night I fed more into a drive hidden in my garage ceiling. Turns out it wasn't just Red Ridge Supply. There were 8 shell companies. Some paid twice, some didn't exist, some had links to politicians and their kids. He was laundering money through a charity build. For veterans. I wasn't ready to go to war. But I was done playing dumb. Then the real hit came. Late September, federal agents came to the site. Not to arrest Fletcher. They came with a warrant for me. Fraud. Money laundering. Racketeering. I got cuffed in front of my crew. No one said a damn thing. Turns out Fletcher had transferred every fake invoice, every suspicious payout, every questionable contract to my name. He'd built the whole scam on my signature. Not forged. Just duplicated. I'd signed the top-line approvals without reading every sub-detail. Because I trusted him. Because I was tired. They froze my accounts. Took my truck. Searched my house. I spent 3 nights in county before my lawyer could post bond. That Friday morning, I stood in my garage with the sun bleeding in and stared at the drive hidden in the insulation. Everything was there. Every shred of truth. But no one cared about truth. They cared about proof. And I had just enough to turn this entire thing on its head. Fletcher thought he'd buried me in concrete. He just forgot I built the damn foundation myself. I didn't leave the house for 2 days. Not because I was hiding, hell, I didn't have much to hide anymore. But I needed time. Quiet. No lawyers, no cops, no pitying stares from the neighbors who suddenly stopped waving. Just me and the mess Fletcher Dane dumped in my lap. I sat at the workbench in my garage, flipping through the files on that drive like scripture. Every invoice, every subcontractor, every ghost company he used to pull money out of the build. One name kept popping up, Devin Halter. CPA, consultant, financial mechanic. I'd never met him, but his signature was on damn near every disbursement. That was my first target. I drove out to Chesterfield that Monday. Devin's office was in a rented suite above a frozen yogurt place, the kind of place that gives you the illusion of stability while bleeding you quietly through overhead. I wore my best flannel and carried a clipboard like I belonged. Mr. Halter's in a meeting, the receptionist told me. I'll wait. She frowned. It could be an hour. I said I'll wait. 23 minutes later, a man in a blue blazer with a neck like a pencil came out of the back office. Devin. We made eye contact. I saw the flicker in his eyes. He knew exactly who I was. You're Ray Cole, he said flatly. You're smarter than you look. He tried to walk past me. I stepped in front of him. We're not doing this, he said, jaw tight. I think we are, I replied. And I think you're going to want to listen very carefully. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't threaten him. Just gave him a USB drive with 3 files, the fake vendor trail, the duplicated payments, and a log of the timestamps from my accounting software, the same software his firm had access to slip those payments through. If I go down, I told him, you go down next. And if I go down, I'll go swinging. He didn't speak. Just nodded once. Then left. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. In that time, my lawyer, a guy named Charlie Reese, managed to delay the pretrial hearing and start digging into discovery. What he found was worse than I imagined. They've got affidavits from 2 contractors claiming you authorized cash payments off the books, Charlie told me one night over late diner coffee. Fletcher's lawyer submitted signed statements. The kind of thing juries believe. They're lying. Yeah, but it's your signature on those pay orders. He slid a copy across the table. My name. My writing. Except it wasn't. Not quite. The R was too straight. The C curled the wrong way. That was my break. I never wrote this, I said. And I can prove it. You sure? I spent 30 years filling out blueprints by hand. I've written my name over 10,000 times. This isn't mine. Charlie stared at it. Then we get a handwriting analyst. Quietly. Meanwhile, Fletcher kept building. Literally. Another ribbon cutting on a project I helped plan. He smiled into cameras while I watched him from my beat-up truck down the road. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt purpose. I met with a local journalist named Sharon Lind at a Waffle House off I-70. She covered municipal corruption, quiet, serious woman with crow's feet and a tape recorder that never left her side. I gave her copies of everything. Not the originals, just enough to get her interested. You're saying this whole project's a front? She asked. I'm saying there's over $2 million unaccounted for, funneled through shell vendors, approved by a man who's now running for a Senate seat next spring. That got her attention. We parted ways. I didn't expect much. Reporters needed more than whispers. They needed fire. So I gave them fire. I reached out to 3 subs I'd worked with for over a decade. Honest men. Guys with families. They hadn't been paid on time. Some not at all. I told them what I knew, what Fletcher had done. I didn't ask them to go public. Just asked them to look through their payment ledgers. 2 days later, I had 6 more fake vendor names. I brought them to Charlie. We're building a case, he said. But it's still shaky. You sure about going public? I want a hearing, I said. On the record. That's dangerous. I'm not looking for safety anymore. He nodded. We filed a motion to unseal financial records connected to the Veterans Project. It got denied. But 2 days later, Sharon's article dropped. Built on lies, the scandal behind the Columbia Veterans Center. By noon, it was trending statewide. By 4 p.m., Fletcher's face was all over the evening news. He blamed it on accounting errors. A rogue subcontractor. That subcontractor was me. But this time, I had the receipts. That night, someone broke into my garage. Didn't steal anything? Just trashed it. They wanted to scare me. They didn't know I hadn't been scared since Mosul 2004. They didn't know I slept with a crowbar under my bed. They didn't know I'd already made 6 backup drives mailed to 6 different lawyers in 3 states. The war was coming, and I was finally awake. By the next morning, I had 3 voicemails from people I hadn't heard from in years. Contractors, city clerks, Even an old college buddy who ran permits for the zoning office in Jefferson County. Sharon's article had hit harder than I expected. Turns out when you shake a tree this rotten, the dead fruit starts dropping fast. I didn't gloat. Didn't feel satisfied. All I felt was pressure. Pressure to move fast before Fletcher and his legal army started patching up the leaks. That night, I drove out to the outskirts of Columbia. There's a diner off Route 63 where a lot of construction crews go after shift. I found Terry Yates there, one of the guys who'd helped me lay foundation on the Veterans Center project 5 years ago. He was working the counter, now missing 3 molars and a lot of faith. You know, he said as I slid into the booth, when you left the project, we all thought it was cause of burnout. Maybe a stroke or something. You were gone so damn fast. Wasn't burnout, I said. It was betrayal. He looked at me. You serious? I handed him a packet. Payrolls. Vendor records. My resignation letter, filed and ignored. He flipped through the pages, slowly, lips pressed into a tight line. You telling me all that money we never saw Fletch was pocketing it? Through Halter. Through shell vendors. Through your trust. He shook his head, quietly furious. That bastard paid us 30 cents on the dollar. And we still kept showing up. We were building something we believed in. Turns out it was just a house of cards. I looked at him carefully. You still got your copy of the change orders? The handwritten ones from Phase 2. He nodded. In a storage bin, collecting dust. Get them. We'll meet tomorrow. I need everything. Terry wasn't just a worker. He was the informal historian of that project. The kind of guy who saved receipts, marked blueprints with red ink, documented where pipes actually ended up versus where the architects said they would. His stuff wasn't just backup, it was a roadmap to every corner Fletcher had cut. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with 10 more men like Terry. Quiet guys. Welders. Plumbers. Sheetrock hands. All of them had the same story: late pay, odd accounting, promises from Fletcher that never came true. I gave all of it to Charlie. We're building a monster here, he said one night, flipping through a 3-inch thick binder. If this goes federal, it won't be just Fletcher on the hook. I know. But the city's going to fight back. They're going to call you bitter. Disgruntled. Washed up. I nodded. Let them. In private, Sharon was already hearing whispers. The city council was under pressure. Fletcher's campaign donors were backing away, slowly but steadily. Someone had leaked that he was planning a Senate bid and that he needed the Veterans Center as his golden halo. We were about to set it on fire. But not before I made it personal. That Saturday, I showed up at Fletcher's big charity gala. Black tie. Catering. Champagne that cost more per bottle than I made in a week these days. I wasn't invited, but no one questions a man in a dark suit carrying a gift box. I waited until dessert. Slipped past the guards with a waiter's cart and dropped the box right at the foot of the podium. Then turned around and walked out. Inside the box? A set of blueprints. The real ones. The ones with the unauthorized alterations scribbled in Fletcher's own hand. And a note. I built your legacy. Now I'll dismantle it brick by brick. 3 days later, Charlie got the call. A federal grand jury was forming. They wanted testimony. Documents. A timeline. I think you just blew it open, he said. Good, I replied. But we're not done. Because it turned out Fletcher hadn't just stolen from me. He'd also refiled permits under my license after I was gone. Forged my signature. Applied for tax credits under my business name, which had been inactive for 2 years. That was enough to bring the IRS sniffing. Charlie looked at me across his desk. Ray, we could settle. Walk away. You're looking at clear vindication already. I'm not interested in vindication, I said. I want to watch that man explain to a judge why he used a veteran's name to commit fraud. The hearing date was set. The night before, I stood in the shell of what was supposed to be the next big development, Fletcher's Innovation Park. A tech hub. Dozens of permits already filed. Cement barely dry. I stood in the empty lot, boots on dirt I once hoped would mean something. Then I reached into my jacket, pulled out a small bag of sand from a rock. Had it for years. Never told anyone. I scattered it quietly onto the concrete. You tried to erase me, I said aloud. But this is mine now. Next morning, I testified for 3 hours. Charlie beside me. Federal agents in the corner. Fletcher in a pressed suit, jaw clenched so tight you'd think his teeth would crack. I answered every question with precision. I had no vendetta, I told them. I only had facts. Receipts. Blueprints. Truth. And one final promise.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing experience, but we really need your support, namely a subscription to the channel, which can make it possible to hire a professional voice actor and make the best content for you.
I may have built the foundation of that center, I said, but Fletcher Dane built the corruption on top of it. And I refused to let my name be part of that structure any longer. They asked if I felt remorse. I said no, because some men don't deserve forgiveness. When the subpoenas started arriving at Fletcher's offices, the local press did what it always does, they whispered first. But by the time the story made it to the evening news, there was nothing left to whisper. Headlines weren't subtle anymore, Veterans Center under federal investigation. Former project head alleges fraud. They didn't name me in the opening broadcasts. Not yet. But anyone who knew the industry, anyone who'd spent time in union halls or construction trailers in Missouri, knew exactly who I was. I thought I'd feel fear. Instead, I felt calm. Like I'd finally stepped into the storm after years of pacing its edge. Charlie kept me informed as more of Fletcher's lies unraveled. The forged permits were just the tip. Turns out Fletcher had created not one but 3 shell corporations during our final year on the Veterans Center project. Each billed under different LLCs with addresses tied to rundown P.O. boxes. Money flowed through them like water through cracked copper pipes, quiet, leaky, corrosive. And then there was the insurance scam. That one caught me by surprise. They faked damage reports, Charlie said one morning, handing me a packet of drone photos. Filed claims on repairs that never happened. Pocketed the funds through a subcontractor who no longer exists on paper. I stared at the photos. Roofing work that looked pristine, but had invoices showing water damage, mold abatement, HVAC replacements that were never delivered. How much? North of $900,000. And they used my business license for that? Charlie nodded. That's the part the feds care most about. Fraud's one thing. Using a dead business to commit insurance fraud crosses a state line. They wanted federal, I muttered. Now they've got it. The thing that surprised me most was how quiet Fletcher became. No statements. No media spin. No damage control. The man who'd once had an answer for everything, who'd built an entire persona around confidence and control, had gone silent. I understood why. He knew the walls were closing in. And more than that, he knew I wasn't done. Because while Charlie worked the legal front, I focused on the people. The ones Fletcher had used, discarded, threatened. I went back to see Terry Yates. This time with a cameraman. We're filming a deposition, I told him. Not for court. For the record. I want your voice on tape. He agreed. Then I went to Linda Garcia, who'd handled accounts payable for the Veterans Center project. She'd left 3 months before I did under suspicious circumstances. Said it was family stuff. It wasn't. He made me falsify invoices, she admitted, eyes down. Said if I didn't do it, someone else would. I asked her if she'd go on record. She looked at me for a long time before saying he told me I'd never work again if I talked. You think I care about that anymore? We filmed her too. By the end of the month, I had 7 testimonies. Contractors, clerks, suppliers, each one a cut in Fletcher's armor. I bundled them into a drive. Labeled it Project Lazarus. Because this was more than just exposing a fraud. It was a resurrection. Of my name. My legacy. The work I'd poured decades into. And it wasn't just me anymore. People started coming forward on their own. Anonymous letters. Phone calls at night. One envelope showed up taped to my door with nothing inside but a USB and a single sentence written in black marker. He buried us in silence. Time to make noise. Inside the drive, internal emails. Invoices. Photos of Fletcher at private golf courses with city officials on days he claimed to be on-site inspections. One photo, dated 6 months after I left the project, showed Fletcher shaking hands with Senator Clay right in front of the completed Veterans Center. Except the final inspection hadn't happened yet. He faked a ribbon cutting for press optics and used the photo in his campaign brochure the next week. I sent the photo to Sharon. She didn't respond with words. Just 3 fire emojis. She knew what it meant. Public funds. Staged milestones. Federal charges. I met Fletcher face-to-face one last time before the grand jury hearing. Not planned. Just bad luck on his part. He was in the courthouse corridor, talking to his lawyer. Saw me. Eyes narrowed. Wasn't enough to disappear, huh? He sneered. I didn't disappear, I said. You erased me. There's a difference. His lips curled. You think any of this sticks? You think they'll put me away for some paperwork? You're not a crusader, Ray. You're just another bitter old man who couldn't handle being left behind. That's when I leaned in. I built what you stole. I remember every bolt, every slab, every shortcut you took. You think I'm bitter? You have no idea how long I waited to watch you crumble. He tried to hold the stare. Failed. Walked away. I watched his shoulders slump as he disappeared down the hall. That was the real crack. Not legal, not financial. Psychological. He knew I'd already beaten him. Not because I had the upper hand legally. Because I was willing to burn what he spent his whole life trying to polish. His image. His myth. The hearing began the next morning. Raymond Kessler versus Fletcher Dane et al. For the first time in 15 years, my name wasn't buried at the bottom of a contractor's spreadsheet. It was at the top. And it was there for one reason. I made sure the truth outlived the lies. End of part 4. Let me know when you're ready to move into part 5, where reputations begin to crumble and Ray makes his most ruthless move yet. There's a moment somewhere in the middle of every demolition when the building doesn't know it's falling yet. To the untrained eye, it still looks whole, intact, even. But if you look close enough, you see it. Hairline fractures in the foundation, the faint tremble before steel remembers it's just metal. That's where Fletcher was standing now. Right at that moment. Still walking, still talking. Still wearing his tailored suits and flashing those politicians' teeth. But everything beneath him was shifting. The grand jury proceedings weren't public, but that didn't stop the media from circling like sharks. The testimonies I helped collect were now official exhibits. Charlie made sure of it. Internal fraud, misappropriation of federal aid, falsified vendor contracts. The case wasn't bulletproof, but it was heavy enough to crush a reputation. And in Fletcher's world, image was currency. 2 days after the hearing started, Linda Garcia's deposition leaked online. She wasn't named, but it didn't take long for people to connect the dots. Her voice trembled in the recording. Not with fear, shame. You could hear it in every word. He said if I didn't process the invoices, the center wouldn't get finished. That the vets would suffer. He always made it sound noble. Like the theft was necessary. Like he was doing them a favor. Comment section went nuclear. Within hours, 3 local news channels were running specials. The Veterans Board of Supervisors announced an internal audit. The city froze a $12 million grant for Fletcher's newest project, some fancy senior housing tower near the marina. I smiled when I saw that headline. I hadn't needed to burn him. He was finally lighting himself on fire. But I wasn't done. I knew how people like Fletcher survived. He'd weather the scandal, shift the blame, hire a PR firm that specialized in reputational resilience. He'd rebrand, pivot, rename his company and show up 6 months later at another groundbreaking, shaking hands with a new city official who either didn't know or didn't care about his past. Unless I changed the ending. So I decided to bury him. Not with noise, but with silence. I started by buying the domain name of his flagship company. It had expired, unnoticed in the chaos. Cost me $14. Then I created a bare-bones website. Just 1 page. 1 photo. Fletcher, standing at the podium holding a check with the Veterans Center's logo behind him. The date stamped on the image, 1 week before the federal funds were misallocated. Beneath it, a single line of text. The face of fraud never changes. Just the name on the building. I bought its space on Google. Then Bing. Then Facebook. I targeted anyone searching for Fletcher Dane construction, veterans housing projects, federal grant developments. I kept it simple. Silent. Surgical. By week's end, it was the first result you saw when you searched his name. He found out on a Saturday. Called Charlie's office furious. Threatening legal action, takedown notices, defamation suits. But there was nothing to take down. Every word was verifiable. Every image was public record. Every document backed by testimony and dates. Charlie emailed his lawyer a single sentence. Your client is welcome to sue the truth. They didn't respond. The next blow came from inside Fletcher's own walls. His project manager, Danielle Kirkland, filed a whistleblower affidavit. Said she'd been pressured to alter time cards, backdate change orders, and push through procurement approvals without proper documentation. Claimed Fletcher threatened to blacklist her if she didn't comply. Her lawyer handed the affidavit directly to the press. I didn't have to leak anything. The walls were falling on their own. It was then that Sharon called. You know this won't bring back the center, right? Her voice was tired. Not angry. Just worn thin. I know, I said. But it might stop the next one from being built on lies. She was quiet a moment. You didn't just burn his house down, Ray. You made sure nobody would ever want to live there again. She hung up. I didn't take it as judgment. Just acknowledgement. By month's end, Fletcher Dane Construction filed for Chapter 11. They blamed reputational harm and frozen assets for the insolvency. The truth was simpler. No one wanted to touch a man who stole from veterans. No bank. No vendor. No city. He went quietly after that. Pulled his kids out of private school. Sold his country club membership. I heard whispers he was trying to relocate to Arizona under a consulting alias. Didn't matter. I wasn't chasing him anymore. I went back to the Veterans Center a few weeks later. Not for closure. Just curiosity. The front gates were locked. The sign still bore my original logo, faded but intact. A paper notice taped to the door read, "Closed pending review." I walked around back. The benches I'd helped design were still there. The mural Terry painted barely visible behind sun-bleached plastic tarping. Weeds were growing between the pavers. The air smelled like dust and neglect. It looked like a place waiting for someone to remember it mattered. I sat on one of the benches. Let the silence settle. Thought about all the people who'd come through these halls. The ones Fletcher lied to. The ones I failed by staying silent too long. But mostly, I thought about what it meant to win. Because revenge isn't a clean word. It sounds sharp, decisive like justice with claws. But the truth is messier. Revenge is never about triumph. It's about weight. About finally setting it down after carrying it too long. I pulled out my phone. Typed a new domain address into the browser. www.dignitybuilt.org. The homepage loaded. The banner read, "Built by hands that remember. Run by those who won't forget." Beneath it, a launch date. A new initiative. Privately funded. Veteran-led. Fraud-proof. It wasn't about Fletcher anymore. It never really was. It was about building something that couldn't be stolen. Not again. They called the indictment symbolic. That's the word the anchor used on Channel 8 when Fletcher Dane finally stood in front of a judge in the federal courthouse in D.C. Symbolic. Like it didn't matter because people like him never served time. Maybe that's what they thought. Maybe that's what Fletcher believed too as he stood there in his $1,000 suit, flanked by lawyers whose hourly rates could fund an entire wing of a real clinic. But to me, there was nothing symbolic about it. The gavel hit the bench and I knew what it meant. Not prison, not even restitution. Just accountability in a world where so few get it. The sentence was light: 18 months probation, a lifetime ban on managing federal funds, $2.3 million in restitution to be paid by the liquidation of his company's remaining assets. No cell, no jumpsuit. Just collapse, documented and filed in the public record. And yet, as I walked out of that courthouse, I felt something settle inside me. A release. Sharon met me on the sidewalk. She had that same worn leather messenger bag slung across her shoulder, the one she'd carried since the first committee hearing 10 years ago. "They're calling it a win," she said. "I guess it is." "It's not enough," I said. "No," she agreed. "But it's something." I looked back at the courthouse. Gray. Cold. Unmoved by the people it processed. "You still working on that grant application?" I asked. Sharon raised an eyebrow. "The new one? For the Center 2.0? I nodded. "We're getting there," she said. "Still need matching funds." I pulled the folded check from my coat pocket. "Would this help?" She unfolded it. Stared. "Ray." "It's clean money," I said. "Didn't come from contracts. Didn't come from favors. This is personal." "Where did you I sold the cabin," I said. "And the truck. VA pension's enough for now. I don't need much." "Never did." She tried to hand it back, but I stepped away. "Let it build something again," I said. "Something real." For a long time, Sharon just stood there, holding the check like it weighed more than paper should. The land we found was 6 miles south of Fredericksburg. Old farmland with enough room for a clinic, a garden, and a row of low-income transitional housing units. The county had redlined the area for years, called it low priority. To me, it was perfect. Construction started the following spring. Charlie brought in pro bono contractors. Veterans volunteered their time. A local high school offered to paint murals. Every board in the main hall had a name on it, a donor, a worker, someone who believed. We called it the Stand. Not a center. Not a shelter. A place to stand. That's what so many of us needed after the war, just somewhere solid beneath our feet. I wasn't involved in the day-to-day. I didn't want a title. I didn't want meetings or press releases. I spent my mornings in the garden. My afternoons helping install solar panels. My evenings walking the perimeter just to remind myself it was real. No ribbon cutting. No politicians. Just a soft opening with coffee, music, and people who knew what it meant to show up without fanfare. And still, he came. Fletcher. I didn't recognize him at first. He stood at the edge of the lot in a faded coat, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. I was setting gravel for the new path from the parking lot. When I looked up, he didn't speak. Just stared. I stood. We faced each other for a long time. The last time we'd spoken, he was calling me a burned-out grunt with delusions of relevance. That was before the indictments. Before his name became a warning label. He started to speak, but I raised a hand. Don't, I said. He swallowed. His lips trembled. Don't ask for forgiveness, I said. Don't pretend this was a misunderstanding. You knew what you were doing. I lost everything. I shrugged. So did they? Before you ever saw a dime. He nodded once. Then again. I just wanted to see it, he said. What you built. I turned back to the gravel. Then see it. But don't come back. He stood there for another minute, then left. No threats. No words. Just an old man walking away from a world he couldn't lie his way back into. That night, Sharon and I sat on the back porch of the main building, watching the floodlights glow over the new mural. A line from the old oath painted across the bricks in bold blue. Leave no one behind. I thought I knew what that meant, I told her. You still do. I thought it was about loyalty, I said. Turns out it's about returning. Making sure there's somewhere to come back to. She sipped her tea. You returned. I watched the wind move through the rows of new garden beds. Heard the laughter of someone unpacking their things in one of the housing units. A kid's bike leaned against the fence. Shoes on the porch. A swing creaking in the breeze. For the first time in years, I didn't feel hollow. Not angry. Not righteous. Just here. Alive. Reflection. Revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it's colder. A quiet unraveling. A dismantling of power brick by brick until all that remains is the truth, raw and undeniable. I didn't destroy Fletcher Dane. I just made sure the world saw him without the polish. That was enough. Justice, I've learned, isn't a moment. It's a place. A quiet, solid place. Where no one lies about who they are. Where no one steals from those who've already lost so much. Where people remember. And stand.
What do you think of the story? Write in the comments.